Welcome back to Burnout Break Room, the podcast that's like a break room, but helpful, where we look at burnout through a realistic lens, talk about ways to take a break from the grind, and spill the tea.
I'm Caitlin Truhella, creativity coach and speaker.
And I'm Lyndie Larimore, licensed therapist and certified career coach. We're your hosts, and thank you for joining us here in the Burnout Break Room. Hi, Caitlin.
Hey, Lyndie, how you doing?
I'm good. I'm good. I'm experiencing this new thing where I'm working less hours and trying to be intentional about how I use my time, doing a little burnout prevention. And it's new for me, and it's almost confronting having a little bit of free time.
Ooh, first of all, let me congratulate you. That is fabulous
Thank you.
yeah, not only going through that experience of being aware of your workload and how you're being intentional about your time, especially considering all of the, great guests that we've met with and, talked about these different methodologies. Yeah, it's a great opportunity to build some of those into our routines. Yeah, but I've been experiencing a little bit of that too, like having this not only like where it results in having extra time, but specifically working in extra time for rest and then being, like you said, confronted with that feeling of, yeah, I'm supposed to rest now and not feel guilty about it.
But what do I do during my rest? What am I going to
Mm,
accomplish during my rest, Caitlin?
yes. What are the metrics?
I need rest deliverables.
Yes. Oh my gosh.
A little insight into my brain.
Same here. One of the things that I literally built yesterday was now, as I've said before in previous episodes, I support the practice of journaling so much.
Mhm.
But for my personal journaling, I like to also have certain metrics tracked in that as well. So, for example, even something as simple as like habit tracking. And like, don't get me wrong, I love a good pen and paper.
Mhm.
But yeah, I literally made a Google form for myself to track the metrics and like, create charts like for to get a snapshot into a whole year.
Wow. Spreadsheets and feelings. That
Yes.
is that's the dream, Caitlin. That's
Hmm.
the dream. Spreadsheets and feelings.
Yep. And for all the Hannah Montana and Miley Cyrus fans, you get the best of both worlds.
Wow, we're just learning so much about you today, Caitlin. I feel like this is the Caitlin episode. We're learning about your singing abilities, your spreadsheets and feelings abilities.
Oh no.
I am here for it. How are you doing?
Doing good. I feel like a healthy sense of accomplishment from, said journal working. But yeah, I am very happy to be here and I'm super super happy to talk more about different ways that, we can make time for that rest and that mindfulness too.
Well, speaking of Miley Cyrus, like we do, I feel like we don't always talk enough about how creativity plays into our day-to-day prevention of burnout.
Mm.
And I realize I'm talking to Caitlin Truhella, the creativity coach, so you know what I'm talking about. But yeah, like how can we use creativity to help, yeah, to help us from going down that burnout road?
Well, as you're talking about music, that is a specific art form that we can use for self-expression. And one of my favorite parts about music in relation to as you're talking about the role that creativity plays in burnout prevention is simply through expression. So every time we use art in some form of another or our creativity to express ourselves, we are forging and reinforcing that bond we have with ourselves.
Hmm.
And You could almost say that we feel most at home when we feel connected to the self, which, I mean, it feels like a really obvious thing to say. Know thyself, or like I create, therefore I am, these, philosophical concepts. But it really is true, and as we've talked about in previous episodes, sometimes when we reach that space in burnout, it's either because or one of the effects that we experience is feeling lost, feeling like we're
Mm.
wandering, feeling disconnected with the self. I don't know who I am. Especially in circumstances where we have lost sight of our principles and the specifics of what we believe in. And so the more we engage with our creativity and that reconnection to self, the more assured we can feel in who we are.
So powerful, beautifully said, and very much in line with actually some themes that are coming up in my therapy practice this week around burnout as being a disconnection from the self. I do think that is a definition of burnout
Mm,
because, more specifically, a disconnection from our values. So, a disconnection from doing work that's connected to our values, a disconnection from doing work that's connected to meaning. And in order to know our values and to know where we find and access meaning, we have to know ourselves. And it really is, it's funny, you call it a simple concept, but the whole reason I have a job is because most people don't know themselves.
mm-hmm,
They know the person that they think they're supposed to be. And I
mm-hmm,
think something about the creativity space is that oftentimes, like you said, like the person that comes out in creativity is a much more authentic version of us. So whether it's singing in the shower or doodling or creating a masterpiece, it's hard for me to imagine like real creativity without it actually connecting to something deeper inside of ourselves.
yes, 100%. And I sincerely appreciate your reference to the different, that I guess you would say the different levels of that as well. So, like you said, whether somebody's singing in the shower or you're doodling, or you are actively pursuing an art style as your expertise, or, even as your job, it still requires the same elements. You have to show up as, yourself in that authenticity in order to do it. Like specifically as we're going along the theme of music, one of the things I realized in, some of the, darkest parts of my life and specifically with burnout as well, I wasn't singing at all. And I'm I tend to be a very vocal person and I wasn't doing that anymore. And it felt like, being a completely different person and, just like you said, that disconnection. And yeah, it means a lot even to just have those small pieces as a part of your life. So even though some people might think like, oh, I just doodle for fun, like it doesn't mean anything, I don't show it to anybody, it still plays a huge role in your life.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Well, and when I think about burnout, when they teach us about burnout, they teach us about the stress response cycle,
Mm,
which comes from back in the day when our ancestors were running from lions. It was the running from the lion and then the defeating the lion and then bringing the lion or whatever form of game
hmm
back to the tribe, sharing a meal, dancing, maybe singing,
hmm
and then resting. All of those things are an important part of telling your body that it is no longer in danger.
hmm
So the opposite of fight or flight is tend and befriend. It's, I forget the one, but there's like, eating and digestion and mating and like these, all of these things really can't happen when one is in fight or flight.
mm, hmm
But in order to tell your body it's now safe, simply talking to a close friend can tell your body that's the tend and befriend, right? Like, it's okay to calm down now. It's okay to come
hmm
down. simply singing, especially with other people, tells your body that, all right, you're in a safe place now.
Yeah, that figurative and literal harmony with
Mhm.
others
Mhm.
is truly beautiful. And even just to go back to what you were talking about, like having even just a quick conversation with a trusted friend about what you're experiencing, what you're feeling. I believe Simon Sinek mentioned that it only takes an average of 8 minutes to have a conversation with someone in order for them to feel heard.
Mm.
And, I think about all of the conversations that I've had with, dear, dear friends of mine, an hour long phone conversation or grabbing coffee or whatever it may be. And, 8 minutes is not a lot of time in the same way, like, if you think that you're asking too much of other people to be there for you, or if you're not sure that you can be there for others in that way, all it takes is 8 minutes.
Mm.
And even again with music, the average song is what, 3.5 minutes long? That's that's even less. So if
Mhm.
you're singing a song with other people,
Mhm.
that's even less time.
The other obnoxious thing about burnout, speaking of music, Caitlin, is like letting your emotions experience the beginning, middle, and end.
Mm,
The
mm-hmm,
concept of burnout as simply being backed up emotions inside of your body.
mm.
I personally can't think of a better way to access emotions than by listening to or performing music.
Yeah, absolutely. And personally, I experienced that first with poetry because I'll be perfectly honest with you, I didn't grow up with a lot of music.
Mm.
I remember so distinctly, like, there were maybe 5 CDs in the house and maybe, like, I'm gonna age myself here, like 3 cassette tapes.
Wow. Yeah. Yeah.
So, but having that understanding of, like, and again, I'll use the example of poetry, so in like word form, but in order to like really understand a piece of poetry that you're reading, you have to let it in first.
Mm.
And I recently learned how to do this with music, and that it's the same concept, but not always with words. In order to connect with music, you have to let it in first.
Mhm.
And that in itself is a form of community. It's you as the individual connecting with the artist. And
Mm.
you might not receive the same message as they intended. Artists talk about this all the time. I was thinking this, X, Y, and Z when making this music, when making this piece, and people receive something the same or a little bit different, their own interpretation. It's still its own form of community in that way.
Oh, I love that. Yeah. You don't have to leave your house to engage in community through music because you're
Mm,
engaging with an artist through their work. That's
right.
lovely. Yeah. And it's interesting we're talking about community, Caitlin, because I think when I think of music these days, I think of community. Growing up was almost an opposite experience for me. My family are musicians going back several generations.
Mm.
I have pictures of my grandmother and great grandmother and grandfather and like the family band, and everyone played an instrument and sang. And, that's on one side of the family. On the other side of the family, my grandmother went to school for a little while to be a concert pianist. I just found this out.
Oh,
And
wow.
yeah, both my parents are musicians and my brother. So music is in the blood very much.
Mm.
So like it's always just like a non-optional part of our lives. Like everyone just like, oh, they're music, like that they're all musicians. That's who they are as in their identity. And anything on top of that is like, oh, you also do this? Okay. All right. Okay. But you're a
A
musician.
bonus.
Right.
Hmm.
Exactly. And so I heard music constantly from the womb. Like this was a constant experience for me. And I grew up also in a family of like, men who cried and going back generations, right? Because I think because of music, right? They were also like ministers and ministers, I think it's kind of cool to cry, but it would happen when with music often, right? And so there was this kind of precedent set in my life, not always perfectly, and it certainly wasn't always like easy, but that emotions are okay, and that showing them and displaying them are okay, and that you can access them by listening to music.
Mm, definitely. It's really interesting to consider music in that way. And I love how you describe like the art itself in the way that music helps us access that vulnerability with ourselves, but also each other. Like as you know, you talk about the concept of the family unit and beyond.
Mhm.
Yeah, that's really cool.
And I just think about all of those things too that I was just talking about were also happening in community.
Mm-hmm.
So whether or not this is your thing or part of any kind of belief system for you, places of worship, religious institutions, churches, mosques, temples, they are communities,
Mm.
as are like choruses and choirs. Those are also communities, bands, jam sessions, right? Like paint nights, right? These
Mm,
are all places
mm-hmm.
where you can go access the creative and be in community with people. And I'm what's coming to mind as we talk about this is Robert Putnam wrote a book called Bowling Alone: The Collapse and Revival of American Community. And
Ooh.
yeah, and I will say I have not read the book, but I did hear him on a podcast. So that's the same thing, right? It's exactly the same as reading the book, but
Inspiration comes from many places.
exactly. And it was a great conversation about just how important community is. It was a really wonderful conversation about the importance of community
Mm,
and how without places that people can go to be physically around other people consistently, we start to isolate. We start
mm,
to live in echo chambers. We start to other. We start to be more afraid, be more xenophobic. I don't know if any of this sounds familiar.
hmm. Yeah, I would agree, and I think we're seeing a lot more of that, especially in terms of recognized echo chambers. And I know that a big part of social activism right now is looking at ways that we can not only create but also support the concept of third spaces. These places that people can go to not only be a part of community, but reconnect with different big picture interests.
Mm-hmm.
So, for example, one of the reasons I absolutely love libraries is obviously for, as a literary resource. I love to read.
Mm-hmm.
But what a lot of people don't realize is that libraries also serve the great purpose of being that kind of third space as well, a space
Yeah.
that you can go collectively
Mm-hmm.
where there is zero expectation to pay for something.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah.
Because being a part of community should not cost you an arm and a leg.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely, Caitlin. And yes, I'm trying to think of like what are free community spaces that we can just go access. So the library, yeah, even religious institutions often will try to hit you up for membership fees, right?
Hmm?
Yeah, they call it joining, right? But that's a membership fee, and that's okay, right? We need to keep it, they need to pay the bills. But I'm looking at this quote from Bowling Alone, Robert Putnam: people divorced from community, occupation, and association are first and foremost among the supporters of extremism.
There it is. Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
So when we notice, no matter what you believe, what part of the political spectrum you're on, I think it's okay to say that there's a lot of extremist views that are really front and center. in the world.
Hmm.
And I love this concept that the very same thing that really helps with burnout also really helps with keeping people connected and away from those kind of quiet, isolated spaces that where it's easy to point fingers and easy to judge and easy to hate, right?
Hmm. Hmm. Absolutely. And especially likening this to, and of course, this is just one type of community as we're talking about music, even looking at different genres of music, there are so many different genres and then subgenres and subgenres and so much nuance to this art form that it's very difficult to be mired in just one form of, I guess you would say, consumption of a type of music. Like in my entire life, I have never met a single person that says, I only listen to one piece of music. I only listen to one artist, one genre. It's always at least a little bit of a variation, right? And even seeing this in parts of the music community that I've experienced. So, as a as a metal fan,
Wow. Sorry. We just discovered this really, if this is an audio format, so we have to explain. I guess if you do the rock fingers on Zoom, it like creates this like light spectacle rock concert. It's
yes,
really amazing. All right, so back, wow, my mind is blown.
same here. I was not expecting a an impromptu light show, but here we are.
So, so
That is
metalhead.
fabulous. Yes. So, my experience as a metalhead personally, I love this community so much because whether you are in the nosebleed seats or if you're in the very center of a mosh pit, if you fall down at a metal concert, I guarantee you there will be somebody there who helps pick you up, make sure you're okay. And I'll say, like, I've one time a person that I was with ended up getting heat stroke, and the number of people that stop to check in on us, are you okay? Do you need anything? We have
Mm,
extra water. And because I'm very fairly complected, I burn in the shade.
yeah.
I've also had people stop and ask me, like, do you need SPF? Like, I've got extras, totally fine. Like, the sense of community there is so
Mm,
incredible and is just one of the reasons why I love going to these events.
mm. Oh, we love what a great example of community that you just doesn't necessarily come to mind immediately. But yeah, metalheads find each other. And the other thing that you made me think of, Caitlin, is like I'm someone who doesn't necessarily listen to metal, although now I want to because of Zoom. That's really cool. Um, but you're reminding me of something that stuck with me back in, I think it was 2016 when, there were a lot of questions in the world and concerns. And one of the pieces of advice that I heard that really stuck with me and actually kind of shaped a little bit of like the media I was taking in and what I was reading and music I was listening to was this idea of like go out of your way to listen to voices that aren't just like your own.
Mm, hmm.
And I took that to heart because it was in a moment where I felt a little helpless and like I couldn't create immediate change. So I was asking, what can I do right now? And so what I could do right then was like seek out other voices, uplift other voices, learn, hear from people who don't look like me, who don't sound like me, who don't come from my same world. And so now when I'm meeting someone who doesn't share my same identity or doesn't come from the same part of the world as I do, one of my first questions is show me to your music.
Mm, hmm.
Show me to what you're listening to right now. Like bring me there. I want to go to there. because we learn so much about people and culture and experience from how they make music.
Mm, absolutely. It is such a huge part of culture. And even you're specifically reminding me of my initial experience in film school and looking at how entertainment began
Mhm.
in, not just societal spaces, but what it meant to culture as well, like how we see or the role that entertainment and in this way music plays in different cultures. And even just like what I will never forget this, learning the evolution of dance, specifically looking at the blending of the incredibly expressive African dance with these big movements and like show of physical prowess and that kind of thing. And then Irish dancing, which very regimented and all about like making the right steps and these, leaps and specific footwork, blending that together into more of what we see in contemporary dance.
Mm,
And I remember learning that in school and just like my jaw was on the floor. This is amazing,
mm, mm,
where it all comes from.
mhm, mhm.
And you feel that connection too
Yes.
with these different forms of expression.
And and then suddenly when you see someone from maybe Nigeria dancing in the way that is, like a folk dance from their area, suddenly you're learning something about an area of the world that you didn't know something about before, potentially, right?
Mm,
Um, I'm reading Girl with the Louding Voice right now by Abby or Abi Dare from
hmm
Nigeria, and it's bringing me there, right? Simply
mm,
reading that book is bringing me to, I'm learning so much about the culture, not only, but also like the political system and the financial system and what women go through and how similar it can be sometimes to what women go through here, but also like a little different, right? So when we take in art from communities other than our own, we start to dismantle prejudices, we start to dismantle biases, we start to dismantle misunderstandings, we start to feel connected to people that we didn't feel connected to before. We stop othering.
mm,
And again, this is still related to burnout, right? Like if anyone in our podcast right now is saying, I thought we were talking about burnout, we are talking about burnout right now.
hmm
And this is directly, we're going to shout out to our friend who we won't mention. I'm going to say his name, but told Caitlin and I that we needed that needed to pack us off to go to Venezuela, I think, which is fun. That sounds great to me.
mm,
Um, sounds like a fun trip. But yeah, like this is about burnout. We talk about these things because burnout happens because of racism, sexism, homophobia, transphobia, right? Like
hmm
that all contributes to burnout. Hatred and fear contributes to burnout, right? If we're
It most certainly
constantly in
does.
fear of others and living in a dark place because we don't feel like it's okay to come out, we are burning out.
Yeah, it's that experience of constantly masking and
Mm.
not only knowing who is or is not safe, as well as the spaces that are or are not. Because in one form or another, I think we all have experienced that feeling of learning that a space is not safe to talk about something,
Mhm.
whether it's the subject itself or if it's related to you,
Mhm.
and the sinking feeling that comes with that.
Mhm.
Whether it's in the workplace or, in your family or, whatever context it can be.
Mhm.
It's like leaving part of you at the door
Mhm.
and knowing that unless something changes, you won't be able to bring that part of yourself into that space.
Mhm. Absolutely. And that's exhausting, right?
hmm
Uh, Communities of color talk about code switching, right?
Mm, hmm
And
Yes.
it's knowing that in order to be accepted in this space, I have to change my language.
Hmm.
Caitlin, every space I walk into, I can just talk exactly how I was raised to talk, and generally every space, right? I don't have to change the way I talk to fit into a space because I live in
Hmm.
a world where the way that I talk is considered the normal, except for when I want to swear all the time. Sometimes I have to do that, not to do that so much, but that's it, right? That's the extent of code switching for me. But there are some people who merely by existing have to change their language. And I don't necessarily mean like speak a different language. I
Hmm.
mean speak encoded language in order to be accepted as competent in
Hmm.
certain spaces or okay to be there, or to make everyone else feel okay, right? Like if I speak this way, then they'll feel okay with me being here. And that can also contribute to burnout. So going back to music, Caitlin, like I also think of just like the power of like hip hop in
Mm,
really kind of bringing forward voices that had been historically silenced.
yes, absolutely. Hip hop, punk,
Mm-hmm.
there's so many genres that recognize the untold stories and the perspectives that often are never heard about.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And I think that music often is the, for lack of a better word, like instrument
Mm,
where these stories can be told in a way that people will actually hear them. Not everyone's going to read a book. Not everyone's going to go to a lecture. Not
hmm.
everyone's going to listen to a radio show or even a podcast on something, but they might hear a piece of music
Hmm.
just by nature of like walking through the grocery store, right? Like music is everywhere. And so I do think it's a really accessible way to hear people's stories and to tell stories. In fact, that's many cultures, their stories lived through music.
Mm, hmm.
So
Definitely.
I'm just struck by like how important. So, coming back to kind of full circle, this idea that, I just want to say out loud, I think we're in a tough moment right now, and burnout definitely happens in the workplace. Often that's the kind of burnout we talk about as a society. We don't often talk about just the burnout of existing right now.
Mm,
I know people have said so much about even just finding a job right now is creating burnout. It's such a scary time to be unemployed or underemployed, but also just picking up your phone and looking at the news or looking at social media. Like it's all contributing to an overall sense of stress and dread for many people. And so, any opportunity that you have to access something creative, to access something beautiful, I tell my clients, look for the beauty around you.
mm, mm, hmm.
That's a moment where your body can feel safe.
Absolutely. That is that is pure poetry in itself, Lyndie. And I think a few months ago, I read Jane Goodall's book on hope, and
Mm,
especially as she talks about and mind you, this book was written several years ago. And so, of course, I've understanding the context of what that meant at the time means even more now, I feel like. And so much of what she talked about, even bigger than, what she's known for within the subject of climate change, but even going beyond that to what it means to remain hopeful
mm,
these days,
mm,
because the more we are aware of atrocities going on and the more we see really, really heavy things not only happening, but happening in our backyards,
mhm,
happening to people that we love
mm,
and that we care about.
mm,
And seeing people realize that there are real consequences to these situations.
mm.
And
Yeah.
she talks so much about when these things happen and when we're seeing it, it is incredibly heavy. There's
Mm,
there's no way around it.
mhm,
But at the same time, we can recognize the beauty in the ability to see that.
Mm-hmm.
Because as much of a burden it might feel like, and it is,
Mm-hmm.
it reminds us that we still have the ability to care.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And with that ability also exists the potential to see the beauty in the world. Even though, good news is not seen as like newsworthy
Mm-hmm.
or as popular in whether you want to look at mainstream media or social media, like the amount of rage bait that circulates is quite astonishing. And I'll tell you personally, one of the forms of mindfulness that I desperately try to maintain is in the time that I do spend on social media and these spaces is doing everything I can not to interact with that kind of content because of course, the more you interact with it, such as hate comments,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
the more it's going to continue showing up in your feeds.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I couldn't say it better myself, Lyndie. Like there, as much as it might not feel like it in the moment, there is still beauty in this world. And not only does it currently exist to be found, but we can create it
Mm-hmm.
together in community, in art, in practicing our own creativity and recognizing it in others as well. Like I'll tell you one of the absolute favorite parts about what I get to do is recognizing the myriad of different forms of creativity that other people express and celebrating it because it is so beautiful. There's no two ways about it.
You just read my mind, Caitlin. I was just going to say my challenge for myself is to continue to recognize the beauty in people.
Mm,
And that's one of the first things I had to learn as a therapist. Not had to, I got to learn that I get to bear witness to beauty in every single person that I work with. And it becomes really easy after a while when you're looking for it. And I think that's part of what's happening right now is we're no longer seeing the beauty in others.
mm,
And so my challenge to myself is to continue to look for that because bottom line is, Caitlin, if that's what we're focusing on, that means we're not focusing on our stresses for that day. Like the very least, it's a vacation from the other crappy thoughts that we have to think about, right? If I
mm.
can look at someone and be like, oh, you have got a great smile, or wow, like that was a really courageous thing you just did, or good for you for telling me to fuck off, right? Like that took some courage. I wish I
Hmm.
had your courage to be able to just say that out loud, right? Like,
Mm,
it can be a fun game too, because you can you can really you start to see the beauty in everyone, even when it's difficult, right? Some people are just beautiful people and it's easy, but there are some people they've gone through the world with people refusing to see their beauty, and
mm,
so maybe they're hiding it now.
mm.
um it's fun to be the one who can kind of dig it out anyway.
Yes. Oh my gosh. And I hear exactly what you're talking about there, Lindy, because that is an incredibly fun game. Like to see how you can meet hatred and like somebody just being obnoxious with like all of the love and positivity in the world. It's like it's so much of the time like you can see it like their brain locks up because they weren't expecting that response. It's like and I experienced this in some of my work experience too. Some clientele are definitely more demanding and seen as like more difficult than others. And the number of times I was, screamed at or yelled at because like there wasn't, mustard on the table or, something like that. But responding to, that obtuseness with just, you chose to give me your attention. Like, oh, I feel so important. Oh, thank you.
Yeah, I could see system failure after that. Yeah, complete
Hmm.
shutdown.
Hmm. Error,
Yeah.
page not found.
Yeah. 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 And that's just a fun game. It's just a
Yep.
fun game. Yeah. Well, Caitlin, I think we've solved all of the world's problems again.
Yeah, everybody just keep throwing all the problems our way and we'll make our way through the list.
Hmm. The answer for this week is listen to music, be in community, find the beauty, and especially find the beauty in others.
Hmm. Yep. Shall we? I wonder, Lindy, what's something beautiful that you see in your life today?
Ooh. I'm in the process of building community myself. So this feels very relevant and outside of spaces that are kind of the typical places that I've had community in the past. I've stepped away from some communities that I've been a part of for years, and that was difficult. It definitely felt like the right thing. So I'm trying to be a little more creative in like where I find community and am just coming up with the most wonderful, it's almost like I just kind of put that out there and then these lovely people are coming into my life. And so yeah, this feels very relevant to what's happening for me right now. So I'm grateful for that. What about you,
Hmm.
Caitlin?
I have been learning to see the beauty in the desert, and
Mm,
I've personally never lived in the desert before, and I'm appreciating the life that still manages to exist in such harsh conditions
mm,
and is a constant reminder to me, especially right now, that although, things might be dry and arid and, feel like nothing could flourish in this place,
mm,
it does.
mm,
And what is also a constant reminder is I don't know if you've ever experienced the specific kind of quiet that exists like in the middle of a desert, but it is profound to
mm,
say the least. And especially like as we started, at the top of the episode talking about deprogramming our productivity mindset, this is a constant reminder for me right now to exist in the moment, in the quiet, and doing nothing in this way is still productive. It's like a gateway to a different kind of peace. And so that's the beauty that I'm recognizing.
mm. Wow, very poetic, very powerful. So get out to the desert, everyone. It's a gateway to a different kind of peace,
Mm-hmm.
um, or whatever is the desert in your life, right? Like we all
Mm.
have a desert in our lives, whether it's literal or figurative. Again,
Mm-hmm.
finding the beauty in the desert. I love that. It's a beautiful
Right.
metaphor. So, when you're not finding beauty in the desert, Caitlin, or in the Burnout Break Room, where can we find you?
You can find me at editsingreen.com, where I have creative quizzes where you can find your creativity type or where you might be on your creative journey. Or you can also find me on social media, everything from TikTok, Instagram, and LinkedIn. Feel free to send me a connection request. And what about you, Lindy? Where can people find you?
They can go to my website, lindylairamore.com, to look up the consulting work that I do, the coaching work that I do. I'm also on LinkedIn. You can also find me on Facebook, but also you can find me a lot on our Burnout Break Room social media pages. Thank you, Caitlin. You've been doing such a wonderful job of updating those with videos from our shows and keeping any updates and news items there. So you can find us on Facebook, on YouTube, on Instagram, and on TikTok, and on Threads. So please visit, please let us know you're listening. We'd love to hear your thoughts and comments. And we look forward to seeing you next time in the Burnout Break Room.
Until next time, thanks, Lindy.
Thanks, Caitlin.